boundaries are the rules that I live by. So what I eat, how much I eat, when I go to bed, when I get up, my daily routine, all of those different rules that I live by, hopefully they're designed so that I'll be healthy. And then there's a second type of boundary, and that affects my relationships with people. And it covers two things: how close I'll let them into my world, how connected I'll let them become to me, and how I'll let them treat me and how I'll treat them. So boundaries, what most people in recovery realize is that in their upbringing, they were not taught healthy boundaries, both personal, internal boundaries and boundaries in relationship to people. And so if they don't learn healthy boundaries, they don't get healthy, and if they're an addict, they don't stay clean and sober. So most addicts find learning boundaries that are healthy, enforcing them is one of the most important things they can do if they're going to have any chance of getting clean and sober and becoming a healthy person. So we've been working through this program. Or this set of teaching on boundaries. So what I want to do tonight, if you've ever been teaching in your life or a parent to your kids, you'll have had this experience, and I go through it all the time. So when I teach, let's say, on boundaries, I spend the whole week teaching clients on boundaries, and they get it all through their 3 months at React. And I sometimes will go home and I think, wow, the way people responded today, I think they got it. I think I was able to make them really understand it. And then I'll have some people come to me a year later and they said, I just heard somebody teach on boundaries, and wow, for the first time I understood it. And then they tell me what they heard, and I go, I taught you that a year ago. And I try not to go home with hurt feelings or a shot to my self-image. But what I've realized is this: we all hear different things at different stages in our life. And it doesn't mean we didn't hear it the first time, but sometimes a year later, when we hear somebody else say it just a little bit differently, it impacts us in a way that we didn't hear it before. And that's how we all learn. That's the reality of teaching. And it doesn't necessarily mean I'm a bad teacher. It just means the person was in a different place at that time and then a different place a year later. What are the signs of healthy boundaries? So you can apply this test to yourself as I go through it. So, number one, you can say no without feeling guilty. So we said that when you come out of complex trauma, if you say no to somebody, it makes you feel selfish or mean or cruel, and you end up feeling guilty, or you're afraid no because they might get mad at you and then you'll feel guilty. So when you can finally get to the place where you can say no and not feel guilty, you have grown and are starting to have healthy boundaries. Secondly, you can ask somebody for what you want or what you need without feeling guilty or necessarily afraid. Another sign that you're growing in this area of boundaries. The third one is that you take responsibility for your own happiness. Now, you're going to hear this repeatedly tonight in different ways, but what happens in complex trauma is you're a helpless child who is not able to control their life. You're a victim of somebody else's decisions. And so as a result of that, you grow up feeling that you can't control your own life. And without realizing that, you can reach adulthood and still feel like a victim. Still feel that everybody else determines your happiness and how your life is going to be. So a key step in growing is to say, no, I'm not a victim of everybody else's decisions anymore. I can choose for myself what I think a healthy life is. And you can stand up for yourself and make decisions and take responsibility. That is such a critical, important part of getting healthy and growing and of having good boundaries. Included in that is you start to do self-care. You take care of yourself physically, emotionally, spiritually, and you don't feel guilty for taking some time just to relax by yourself. And then you can do things out of interest or desire, not out of obligation or pleasing others. So what comes out of complex trauma is you become a people pleaser so that they'll like you. Now, and so you do whatever they want, and you're afraid to say no to them, or you're a servant, a free slave to mom and dad, and you do everything out of obligation. Nobody cares what you want or what you desire. And so now you can come to a place where you can actually do what interests you, and you don't have to be worrying about pleasing others or doing everything out of obligation. Another one, you can behave according to your own values and your beliefs. You don't have to be controlled by somebody else's beliefs that cause you to go against your own values. Another key step in growth. You can feel supported to pursue your own goals because now you can choose the people around you. You can put boundaries with people who are toxic or not supportive and build your own support network. You can require and be treated as an equal. Complex trauma, you're always treated as less than. You grow up and go into relationships and still allow yourself to be treated as less than, treated with disrespect. But growth says that now you're not going to allow that anymore. You're going to be treated as an equal, or you're not going to be in my life. And you begin to create relationships where you're treated as an equal. Very important in boundary setting. Then you are in tune with your own feelings. You know what is going on inside of you. Most people from complex trauma are more aware of what other people are feeling than they are of their own feelings. They know what dad's feeling, they're just not sure what they're feeling. But growth is, now I know what I'm feeling, and that matters. And then the final one, you know who you are, and you know what you believe and what you like. All of those become part of starting to have your own identity. So in complex trauma, where you don't have any boundaries, you don't know where you stop and the other person starts. You're just kind of a blend of everybody, and you feel responsible for them and not for yourself, and it's all mixed up. But now you can start to say, no, this is who I am. This is what I believe. This is what I'm good at. This is what I like. These are my values and my goals, and those become important for you. So I don't know how you did. That was 10 characteristics of healthy boundaries. The next one is characteristics of unhealthy or poor boundaries. So a lot of it will be kind of the flip side of what I've just said, but it will say it a little bit differently. So if you fail to speak up when you're being mistreated, you're still struggling with boundaries because you're not standing up for yourself. If you give away too much of your time, you're still struggling with boundaries because you're afraid to say no. And you're giving everybody your time just to please them and making sacrifices that are hurting you. Number 3, you agree with people when actually you feel like disagreeing. So you can never come out and say what you really feel because you might offend them or upset them. So you just agree with whatever they're saying, not to cause any conflict. That's signs of weak boundaries. Number 4, you feel guilty for dedicating time to yourself. We've talked about that one. You feel taken for granted by others. In other words, you feel that people use you, that they see you as free taxi, a free bank, somebody that is going to be there when they're lonely. All of those things, you don't feel loved, you just feel kind of used a lot of the time. That's a sign of poor boundaries. You stay in toxic relationships. You can't end them, you can't let go of them. Signs of poor boundaries. You have chronic fear, or you're afraid constantly about what others think of you. So you're living with that insecurity all the time of, I wonder what they think of me, wonder what they think of what I just said. That is, again, signs of shame and poor boundaries. You overshare details of your life with others. In other words, you so badly want to be accepted and loved that you don't have good personal boundaries about what you share. And you share way too much up front, and then usually that gets used against you. And that is a sign of poor boundaries. You constantly feel like you're being used, we talked about, and you attract people who try to control you. In other words, as you look back over your relationships, you begin to go, why do I always end up with somebody that's abusive or a control freak? Why do I attract these people? Well, part of the reason is because you don't say no to those people, and they know you're not going to say no because you don't have boundaries. So their radar picks up your lack of boundaries, and they're on you like white on rice because they sense you're weak in the boundary areas. So if you scored poorly on that, you can go back and re-listen to the whole series because you got a lot of work still to go.